This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you so much for joining our session today. This session is number 33 in NSA's Professional Services series. And I'm very excited about this particular session. This is our first session with Cloud Plus. And I'm going to go off camera and do a brief introduction. So our presenter today is Tony Francisco. And Tony is both the founder and the CEO of Cloud Plus. He's a serial entrepreneur, born in San Francisco, raised in Silicon Valley, and he's passionate about deconstructing business concepts, building them into profitable business models. His latest endeavor, of course, is Cloud Plus, this particular company, which he founded in 2003. It's an industry first as a true hosted services distribution platform, enabling passwordless authentication for the SMB market. Tony brings 25 years of experience in sales, marketing, and business development. He's held key positions in GTE, Schlumberger, and Oculan. He's also spearheaded the company's expanding domestic and international sales and channel initiatives. He spent several years working with local, state, federal law enforcement agencies, regulating IT security practices throughout the U.S. He's deeply involved in the tech community, previously serving as a mentor to SCORE, and currently serving on the board of advisors and mentoring entrepreneur groups in St. Petersburg College. And he's also an active member of CompTIA, involved with the community councils and advisory committees. And with that, Tony, please take it away.
Thank you, Brian. That pretty much covered everything about me. So it's exciting to be here. Thank you very much. We're going to talk about something today that is a hot topic. We're going to talk about what everybody is concerned about, and that's stolen passwords, that's security, that's identity theft. Identity theft has really been around, frankly, for the last about almost 30 years now. And in that time, it's been about 24 years, I believe. During that time that identity theft was acknowledged, people didn't understand what it was. And there's kind of a good rule in life: if you can't explain it, you don't really understand it. But once you understand something, once you understand the mechanics, the anatomy of something, of how it works, how it fits together, you understand what you can attack and what you can't have any effect on if you attack it. So it really helps you move forward. And now that we're understanding more and more of how ransomware and how hacking works and identity theft, which is all kind of the same thing, we can explain it better. And this is no longer an IT admin level, engineer level conversation. This is literally what everyone should be talking about. And we are. The recent attacks right now that we're witnessing, if you can see my screen, they have not just doubled. The amount of phishing scams and URLs out there are unprecedented throughout the industry, throughout anyone who has access to email, which is literally every company in the world at this point. Without email, without an online presence, you're not really engaged in the business community. At least that's the general consensus. So what we're seeing is that those that don't understand the best practices of IT are literally exposed on the front line to the people that are hunting for the weak. And those exploitations, starting at the ground level at an employee that no one really cares about, can quickly go up the food chain all the way to reach mission critical information and frankly bring a company to its knees. I think we just heard, I think everyone's talked about the SolarWinds attack. Everyone's talked about, the Kaseya event, which was devastating throughout the MSP, the managed service provider community. People, a lot of people know about the JBS, which is what the world's largest meat processing company. What about the Colonial Pipeline event that occurred? From what I understand, there was just an article that came out today, or I'm trying to look at my notes here. The U.S. Department of Justice, Department of Transportation, contractors, after receiving the, hey, we got a $1 trillion infrastructure budget now that's applied for the Department of Transportation. Guess who's being focused on right now? All the contractors that are going to receive that money. That's where the attacks are coming, because they're looking for the locations where the money is located. And if there isn't money, there's information, and the information is ultimately worth money. So what's happening is we're seeing a combination of the simple identity theft, which is exploited by a simple, hey, your Netflix account isn't working. Click here, and you click on there and you enter your email address and password, and it doesn't work. It says, sorry, our login's not working at this time. Try again in another hour. Guess what? They have your username and password, and you're probably using that same username and password somewhere else. So that's how they grab this information. And from that simple phishing attack, they can easily do some social engineering and then move up the food chain. And you saw how that's literally brought companies, Kaseya, SolarWinds, JBS, Colonial Pipeline, to their knees lately. And it's costing us quite a bit of money. So another day, another breach, it's common, and it shouldn't be. So that's where we go into the question, what is the answer? What is the answer to this thing that is affecting every single person on this planet at this point that has access to email, which again is pretty much everyone? Well, zero trust. And what does that mean? Everyone talks about zero trust, but it's become such a cliche in that zero trust is the assumption that you're not trusting the person that's contacting you and asking for information. Well, it's not necessarily a person. Maybe it's an API, an information grab, a request, a simple query. You should validate every single transaction with the appropriate permission level based on, frankly, what you're willing to give, what you're willing to expose. So the problem with that is the lowest common denominator, passwords. Again, this is not a topic that is like, hey, we're going to talk about passwords for dinner, but it is about to get really exciting. And it's going to be for one of two reasons. The unfortunate first reason is, well, if our company is exploited because, John, Cindy, or Steve received a Netflix query and they logged in exposing their username and password, and that password's probably used in multiple locations for long periods of time, and it's just a matter of time before all those locations are exploited, which means that they have enough information to start really social engineering and have access to much larger and more sensitive data inside your organization from higher level people. If that's the conversation you want to have, technically that's pretty exciting. Not the conversation or type of excitement I would like. Or the other exciting, which is there's a solution for something that is huge. There's a problem right now that needs to be resolved, but no one's been able to explain it until lately, because now we're really starting to understand it. So understanding a little bit more, explaining a little bit more about the problem, 81% of all of the, we'll call them hacks out there, are from compromised passwords. Those compromised passwords come from a variety of sources, everything from, like I said, the Netflix hack, hey, click on this link, and then they install a small script on your computer that's something called screen scraping, or there's a variety of things where you can actually start recording your keystrokes, keyloggers, screen scraping, taking pictures of the actual screen and sending them periodically, looking for very specific types of arrangements of the screen, meaning a Bank of America logo, Citibank logo. When that occurs, they're going to have this information in addition to all of the keylogging that you're typing in your computer, which means even if you change your password, they already have your password. If you're talking about at an enterprise level, how easy is it to get in to an organization's data? Well, of course, they're going to have processes and policies involved to prevent that from occurring, but they're also going to have people, and people are the problem. That is the absolute common denominator between all the hacks out there. It's people. So there may be mechanisms involved that are computer related, but the people are the ones that should or shouldn't be doing something. And that one small flaw, unfortunately, can really cause quite a bit of havoc. So I know we have a number of questions coming in, so I'd like to encourage at this point questions being sent over to Brian. We're going to get to those towards the end, and I'm really encouraging as many questions as possible, because I'm certain there's going to be a lot of them. Now we can go through them one by one. So If we're talking about cybersecurity and where it starts, you're talking about three different things. You're talking about, and I don't want to get into a technical tar pit with everyone, this is the boring part, but you're talking about your identity management server. You're talking about your Active Directory, your LDAP, your Okta, your Microsoft Azure, wherever you're keeping your users and passwords and the associated permissions. But you have to protect that. And then the way to protect that is what's called multi-factor authentication, and we're all familiar with that. There are so many well-documented sources of how to circumvent MFA, 2FA, MFA, whatever you're using. So, and then the third is what's called the password rotation policy. And we're going to get to that one in a moment because it is absolutely the most critical, yet it is the one that everybody stays away from. And we found a way to automate that. That's the exciting part. So what are we trying to do? Well, we've identified that the number one issue is people being compromised. We understand that in order to protect the permissions, the users and passwords on your identity management server, we know that we have MFA, multi-factor authentication, to protect them. But then you get into the password rotation policy. Now, the password rotation policy involves your IT team telling all the users, you have to change your password every 30, 60, 90 days. Well, when you're doing that, three things happen. And everybody who's in IT right now is just moaning because they all know what I'm about to say. The first thing is everybody hates you. Everybody hates the IT team that says you have to rotate your passwords. That's just the way it works. The second thing is the passwords themselves become less secure over time. Well, what does that mean? That means that people start writing them down, sticking them to keyboards. People started enumerating, adding a 1 or a 2 or the date after it. People start making them very simple and easy to remember, such as a birthday and a pet name. So these, through certain hacking methods, are much easier to bypass because it's a moving target that becomes more and more predictable over time. So that's a very unfortunate thing that occurs, but that is in fact one of the things. It's usually the second thing that happens. And the third, which is almost instantaneous, but no one talks about, is that the support team, the IT support team, their tickets shoot through the roof. It's usually on Mondays, it's usually by the same people, but the people that don't remember their password because they just change it. And they change it a month before that. They change it a month before that. And what if you can't use the last 5 passwords? But they always have the set 5 passwords, which goes to point number 2. The passwords become less secure over time. So those are the 3 things that happen every single time. Everyone hates your IT team. The passwords become less secure over time, and your IT support infrastructure takes a beating with that. But password rotation is critical, and I cannot emphasize that enough, because in the world of hacking, if those of you who understand hacking well, you understand that everything has to be surgically precise. It has to be perfect. There isn't a very large margin of error. Everything has to be calculated. And when somebody's moving the target, it's kind of like threading a needle while you're on a galloping horse. The needle is moving. It's not easy. There's much easier ways to compromise whatever location you're trying to compromise. So that's the pretty important part. So during all of this, how can we protect the users from themselves? Well, a lot of them use password management solutions that hold that static password that's in there. And once it's static, you're going to use it and use it and use it until it's compromised. And once it's compromised in one location, eventually it's going to be compromised in other locations. If they compromise your password in that Netflix attack I just kind of gave an example of, then guess what they're going to do? They're going to attack the usual suspects. They're going to go to BofA.com. They're going to go to Citibank.com. They're going to go to your Amazon account. They're going to go to your Home Depot account. They're going to go to everywhere they can go to acquire cash or assets for cash. That's what's going to happen. And we all know that. But what we do is use a password manager to silo those passwords to minimize the damage as much as possible. Yet they're still static passwords that are going to be retained for a very long period of time and probably in multiple locations. So we have, in this particular case, an industry first. This is a true passwordless authentication solution. It's meant for the SMB market all the way through the enterprise level. A company called Secret Double Octopus. That's the actual company name. I swear it was so interesting to me when I said, well, I don't know who this company is, but that name, I've got to see who this is. This is cutting edge stuff. Now, they typically address the larger market, and the larger market being the 10,000 plus seats. What would happen in that case is you download the server, you install it, you configure it, you get it up and running. It's usually about a 4 to 6 week proof of concept time, and then you're up and running with one service. We got that time down to under 3 minutes. So we're really happy about that. It's extremely secure. The due diligence has been done. The backend technology is absolutely solid. The thing about Secret Double Octopus, I refer to it as the SDO. This company has thought about not just where we are today, but where we're going to be in a year, 2 years, 5 years. And in 5 years, your identity is your password. There is no more password. There is no need to know what your password is. Now, I really want to focus on what I just said there, because that should shock a lot of people. What do you mean you don't know your password? That's the way it should be. You shouldn't have to know your password. You should be able to log into anything. You pick up your phone, your mobile device, your YubiKey, whatever it may be, if you're familiar with a YubiKey, and it says through biometric, fingerprint, yes, this is actually Tony. Looks at my face, yes, this is actually Tony. Not just the yes or no on your screen. It's the yes or no, but is this actually you saying that, which is another level more than just the multi-factor authentication. It's not just a single binary yes or no. It's the binary yes or no plus the true validation from a biometric level based on the functionality of your mobile device that this is actually you. And then you're allowed in. It's faster than a password, but here's the best part. The password on the back end rotates. You can have it rotate based on your policy every 2 minutes, 24 hours a day. Your users never have to know their password ever. There's no more changing password, email requests. There's no more confusion of what my password was last month or the month before that. You have zero, you have one device, 2 devices, 5 devices, it doesn't matter. You just simply authenticate with your biometric on your device based on the functionality of your device, the capability of your device, and you're in. But the password is constantly changing on the back end, which is a nightmare for hackers, as we talked about before. So Secret Double Octopus, go check them out. They're an amazing company, but we're talking about the solution here today because it is what I believe to be the future when it comes to authentication. Well, I guess we're talking now about what are the reasons, like why is this being brought up now? Why wasn't this invented before? It probably was, but it wasn't as well received because there was a lot of questions, there were standards. Everybody for the last year and a half has been working from home in some capacity, if you're not full-time. What that means is you have essentially, if you're an IT admin, extended a bridge to every single person's home. Your castle is no longer surrounded by the moat with one single drawbridge in and out. It's got bridges to every single location, and you don't know from an IT perspective if what their kids are doing on their computer. You don't know if they are, because there's no one looking over their shoulder in a lot of cases, what they're doing on their computer. Maybe they're installing a game. Maybe they're installing some, hey, let me just see if I can install this great filter from my camera, which happens to be malware, which happens to be a keylogger, which happens to record all the keystrokes from your keyboard, which maybe even records more than that. That's a nightmare from an admin perspective. So how do you secure that? The first thing everyone goes to is setting up a VPN. Not the right choice. A VPN does nothing but give you a really nice secure tunnel of horrible things going through that tunnel. It's a nice secure tunnel though, but the level of toxic data, the payload going through is what you should be concerned with. So why not, from the endpoint, start authenticating Office 365, which is critical, not only just critical access to data, but we're talking real-time communication. We're talking all the files from OneDrive. We're talking about all of your files from your documents and your spreadsheets with all of the amazing amount of data that people have compiled together. Everything that I just mentioned is now possibly compromised if someone installs the wrong thing on a computer, an endpoint that isn't being managed or monitored. However, the authentication going through SDO, changing the password every 2 minutes, 24 hours a day, confirms, or at least solidifies, some mechanism of security of accessing that data. Now, what happens on the computer, meaning as far as key logging, that's not really applicable anymore. What happens on the computer regarding screenshots, different story, but that's why you have, and that's a much deeper hack. That's why you have, some type of virus scanning tool on the computer that sees what's sending out large payloads of data. Pictures are large payloads of data, by the way. So this end management solution that has to be implemented due to our new COVID lifestyle is critical, and no one's figured out a way to address that. SDO is the end solution because it doesn't just handle Office 365 with the password rotation component, it handles the desktop component as well. So now if you have your son, my son Hayden comes in here and wants to use my computer, he's going to try to log in and it's going to pop up on my phone and it's going to say, hey, Hayden, I can even have him auth in here, or Tony is trying to log into your desktop. Do you want to allow this? Nope. And then you hear me, hey, why are you trying to log into my computer? Oh, sorry, I just wanted to access something. He can log into his profile, which of course there's some security parameters around that as well. So there's a huge benefit to siloing your work environment from a corporate perspective, but also a personal perspective. I don't want everybody looking at what I'm doing. This is my stuff that I should be working on, and it shouldn't be exposed even to family members because this is your job, not something that should be taken lightly. So now, we talked about earlier, the 81% of compromised of hacks are through a compromised password. We're talking about the number of stolen exposed credentials has increased by 300%. I think it's actually more than that, but that's the low end statistic that's confirmed in multiple locations since 2018. The number one reason for lack of trust is passwords. That's an interesting saying because at the end of the day, it's the number one reason for lack of trust is frankly permission validation, and the password is what confirms that permission binary yes or no. So I feel like I'm boring people with that particular topic, but this is the stuff I love talking about. Implementing something that can consolidate all of the services, Office 365, Dropbox, Smartsheet, AWS, Salesforce, into one location so you don't have all those authenticators. It's one location that everything comes into that goes to your back end, to your in-house Active Directory server, your in-house Microsoft Azure, your Okta, whatever it may be. If you don't have one of those, maybe you're a smaller shop that doesn't have an in-house AD server, this is your identity management server. It operates as one or synchronizes to one in-house. But either way, it is the proxy for everything to authenticate through, and a single location you can manage all these services, which means it's changing the passwords automatically for all of these hosted services. These are some great, I'll get to those questions in just a moment. We'll read them through, Brian, if you don't mind. Sorry, they're popping up as we're talking.
Yep, no problem.
What you're really trying to do though is address, like, how does this work? Well, like I said, it's a single server that everything uses as a proxy to authenticate through. It syncs to your in-house AD, Okta, LDAP, whatever it may be. But then it's going to, in a single location, be what we call the single point of truth it's a binary yes or no through SAML, if everyone are familiar with the SAML 2.0 integration to all these hosted services. And since you pay for one license per person per month, it's a month to month, there's no contract on this, you can add as many services you want free. So once you get, let's say, Office 365, and you've addressed that, which is the lion's share, then the first thing you're going to want to do is figure out what else do we have that uses SAML. It's probably going to be quite a bit of things. It's probably going to be Office 365 in addition to AWS, in addition to Salesforce, in addition to Dropbox, Smartsheet. Like there's going to be so many different services that you weren't aware of. Remember that huge target that we talked about, 81% of hacks are from a compromised password. You shrank that down to almost nothing. Now, if somebody sends you, one of your team members, an email that says, hey, check your Netflix, and they check Netflix, well, they use the same email address on your side, well, your password's rotating. So it doesn't matter. There's no concern at that point, which is one of the best things that I've taken away from this with a security background that I have. Here's the takeaway that everybody should listen to and write down. This is the first deep-reaching security policy that you're going to implement that will actually improve the end user experience. I want to repeat that because it doesn't make any sense to anyone who knows anything about security. This is the first deep-reaching security policy that you're going to implement that will actually improve the end user experience. We always had a choice between simplicity and security, and this is the first time that we've brought them together. So what I'm going to do is, did they actually want to see a demo? I guess that's a Brian question.
Yeah, Tony, if you want to give a couple of examples, I think that's fine. And a demo.
Yeah. Let me see if I can do this. And while I'm pulling this up, and I apologize, I wish I was a little bit more prepared for this. Do you want to read off the one of the questions? I can answer those.
Yeah, you know what? We've got a lot of questions that have come in, one publicly and a lot privately, which is awesome. Before we do that, I do want to mention that NSA and Cloud Plus, I have a tremendous partnership, and NSA has an exclusive connector for Infor SXE and Cloud Suite. So, you know, I would invite you guys to certainly connect with us. And the SAML integration, to Tony's point, we can add other software applications. You know, NSA certainly has a number of add-ons such as business intelligence and e-commerce, et cetera. If you're using any of those particular tools, connect with us and we can usually connect that here as well. So one of my team members here, Debbie, asks, she's wondering how hackers are able to penetrate MFA.
Wow, well, that's a complete, that is a lab in itself. So MFA, there are a number of ways to do it. So it really depends on what type of MFA. The Google and Microsoft authenticators have really upped their game. But if we're talking about like a Twilio text component, there are so many routes through that can go anything from the telco itself to the all the way to the end device where they mimic, we'll call it the device ID, that can route, it can mirror some of those particular texts from Twilio. So it's a hack on the Twilio, in between the Twilio and the device side. There's also the service can't really just, in some, depending on the service can't decide, do I send it to this one or this one? So it sends it to both, and you have the ability to intercept that and authenticate in, as opposed to you seeing that at that time would look at it and say, well, this doesn't, I don't understand what this means. At that moment, somebody's already in your account. So that's an entirely, that's a class. and I love, just for kicks and giggles, if you Google MFA hacks, it's gonna guide you through that kind of structure of, well, what type of MFA, what type of multi-factor authentication, what's the device you're using, what's the application, is it Google, is it Microsoft Authenticator, is it Twilio, is it a Cisco Duo hack? They've got a completely separate Cisco Duo hack, which is kind of a higher end MFA tool. But yeah, that's a really deep rabbit hole. I hope I'm answering it the best that I can and saying that there's a lot. Google that, it's gonna tell you which way, but there's so much documentation out there. It's concerning. And I also like to point out that once you realize how easy it is to implement these hack tools around MFA, then you need to back up and say, well, what use is MFA? Then you need to really back up and say, wait, hold on. Companies can't get cybersecurity insurance anymore unless they have MFA, but yet you just realized how helpful MFA really is. It's a fascinating quagmire that everyone is eventually going to come. We're talking within the next 18 months. Everybody is going to require MFA on absolutely everything. And then what's going to happen is we're going to be in the exact same boat we're in at this point with not having MFA because everybody's automated the routes around MFA.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Tony. Now I've got 6 other questions that have come in. You let me know when you want to do a demo, but I will continue on until you tell me to stop.
Yeah. And go ahead. I'm going to log into multiple locations. That way we have, if I can hopefully intercept some of these questions. We went through that. We went through the overview really fast because I always know there's a ton of questions, and that's where the most fun is.
No, this is great. So does this work with desktops and hosted services? Obviously, for Cloud Suite, for, the ERP system, a lot of folks are on CSD. And so that's a very valid question from our users.
It does work with desktops, and we're really happy about that. That was one of our biggest concerns, is that what's the use of using something that just works with hosted services when you still have to have a desktop component? So there's a single location where it addresses all of those particular needs.
Great. Now, what if some of my employees don't use a smartphone?
Ooh, okay. I mentioned quickly, there's something out there called a YubiKey. If you can see on the camera, this little USB token. We're going to be supporting RSA tokens as well. Let me address that because that's another pretty deep rabbit hole. There's a lot of companies out there that, and I apologize if there's anyone out there named Betty, but we call them Aunt Bettys. And the Aunt Bettys of the world, they say, hey, I'm not putting that on my phone. I'm not putting it, you got to buy another phone for me. And so what happens is the administrative team is saying, well, we got to come up with policies. How do we create an expense policy for that particular phone to address the Aunt Bettys of the world? And in the meantime, you have, and that's typically between 3 and 5% of a company, of a larger company, have those particular people that don't want to have it on their phone. They don't have the right device. So what we say is, well, you've got 95% of your company right now sitting there massively exposed to a clear and present danger that everyone in the world is aware of in some degree, but you're waiting for this 3 to 5%. So what you do is you immediately implement SDO, you give that 3 to 5% these YubiKeys, okay, and they don't need a phone. It's done. At least you've secured 95% of your company until you've solidified the policies needed. But these are just as good as the mobile device. Why not? I mean, you're securing the company as a whole. So that's an excellent question. And the moment IT departments talk about that and they have the realization that they're holding everything up in a vapor freeze or a vapor lock, frozen with uncertainty, and they could address that instantly by going on Amazon, buying a handful of these YubiKeys, and taking care of those that don't have the right device, those that don't want to put the app on their device, they can immediately secure 95% of the company while they simultaneously develop the policies. It seems to resonate nicely, and they can move forward very quickly.
Excellent. So what if we do not have an Active Directory server in-house?
I mentioned it briefly. The SDO server operates as its own identity management server. So the one thing that I cannot talk about enough is don't try to boil the ocean. Really understand that this operates completely independently. It works very nicely, and it's meant to work and coexist with your existing architecture. So you don't have to do a forklift project to make this work. This could be implemented. It's a frictionless experience. And again, it's a deep reaching security policy that will actually be it'll be better for it's a better end user experience, which is still fascinating for me to even say that.
Excellent. And the
Do you
questions
want me
keep coming in
jump
here.
in? Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
let me jump into the demo and we can get into those because those
no,
are
that
good
sounds
questions.
great. I got more questions too, so that's great. Go ahead and do the demo.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and by the way, there we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
You should see two screens. So don't judge me by all the emails. Okay, so this is actually my phone. So you can see my phone moving, right? So if it means anything, you can see that?
We can see both. It looks good.
Okay. Okay, so what I did is I logged into portal.office.com. This is exactly what you see. Okay, you're gonna enter your email address and password. I am now going to just type in my, oops, here we go, there we go. Type in my email address. I'm gonna click next and watch what happens on my phone. Oh, I'm sorry. It's going to give me the option because I have a YubiKey as well. So it's going to say, hey, are you logging with the Authenticator app or the FIDO token, the YubiKey? I'm going to go with the Authenticator. I click login, look at my phone. There's the notification. I'm going to click that. It's going to pop up. It's going to say, hey, Tony is trying to log into this. Do you want to do it? Yes or no? I click approve, and then it's looking for the facial ID. It matches my face, and I'm in. Faster than a password. The best thing about that is the passwords changing on the back end. That's the user experience for every single service, even your desktop. So I wish I could say it was more exciting than that. It's not. It literally just works. Any other questions that we can go through, or is there anyone that's?
Can I sneak in with a quick one on this? How does the little YubiKey verify that it's you? How does that work?
Because it's something that you have. So something that you have, something that you know, proving that who you are, the multi-factor authentication. So that addresses the something that you have, and only I have this. And it is part of one of the registered devices, which means that if for some reason I call in IT and I say, hey, I lost my YubiKey, I can immediately cut that as a registered device and reset all the connections that came from that device.
Thanks.
No, it's an excellent question. Other questions?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. My apologies. So yeah, we have several more questions here. So will this work with my bank account and other websites?
Okay, so we are officially in the utopian mindset where everything works together, and I wish that was the case. Fortunately, it is not. So websites as they exist today, most of them don't have a SAML integration yet. There's an eventuality that's going to occur. So one of the first questions I asked is, will this work with, with like my Netflix and stuff like that? And the answer is yeah, in some degree it will if they have SAML. So the next question was, ironically, will this work with my bank accounts, and can I just throw everything in on this? They probably don't have SAML. They probably don't have the ability for us to be an outsourced point of truth, single point of truth. They handle all that internally, which means that you're going to have to continue to reset those passwords, which means those particular websites should be stored in a password manager in some capacity. And you have to do, I know this is a shocker, everyone, rotate the passwords on your own for every single one of them at least once a year. At least once a year, do that. No one on this call does that. No one, which means we're looking for a solution. And the SDO component that we just talked about is that solution.
Yeah, so Tony, to that point, I mean, this is so leading and cutting edge in terms of security that folks are going to be forced to be able to do that, right? These software developers and so forth are going to, need to do that because they're going to be asked about it, and it's going, to more and more of these applications are going to require that. So I think that's, where we're headed.
Yeah.
So a couple more. What
Yep.
is the cost of each service added?
So I blazed over that, and that's my fault for not making that clearer. So once you have paid, so you have John, Cindy, and Steve, and once you've paid for a single license for a single user, which is less than a cup of coffee, for this particular user to, let's say, use Office 365, you should be frictionless, add on AWS and then Dropbox and then Smartsheet and all the free. You've already paid for the license, and you have what you saw it on my phone. Just so you know, I received the exact same alert on my iPad. So you can have multiple devices. You've already paid for the license. So there is no cost for additional devices. There is no cost for my YubiKey. There is no, oh, you got to pay for the actual YubiKey. Go on Amazon and buy one. They range from, $19 to I think like $150 for get the lesser expensive. They're all the same as far as as far as I'm concerned. But the devices are just a variable way for you to go and authenticate, to validate that you are actually there, you're present, and that you are authentically you. So you're not paying for those. The services, you've already paid for the license, so there is no cost for that, which makes this what I consider to be a truly scalable and easy decision for any organization to implement.
Okay, great. Yeah, keep the questions coming, guys. I still have another one here. So what happens if I lose my phone or it breaks? What a great question.
Well, picture is worth 1,000 words. So let me actually show you what that looks like. I am going to share my screen. That was one of the screens that I brought up. If you can remove this. Okay, let me see if you see my, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the actual interface. I'm going to expand in the My Services section. I'm going to expand Secret to Blocktopus, SDO, and you're going to see in the Users tab, I can turn off or on right here on the fly users. So if you have a critical user in your organization that leaves, flipping that switch instantly deactivates them from all services associated to them. So in this case, John Smith, this is a demo. It's clearly a sample partner. Is associated to Office 365. We call these badges. So there'll be Office 365, there'll be AWS, there's desktop, there's a variety of things right here. John Smith has 2 associated devices. I can click on those devices and look at, here's the device, here's the name of the device, when it was activated. I can remove the device from here, or I can even block it. So in the event you, we call it dropping the device in a toilet, oh my gosh, what do I do? First off, it should be waterproof. Secondly, how do you address that? Well, I come over to John. John calls the IT team. Hey, I lost my phone. I dropped it in the toilet. I don't want to use it for a little bit. I'm going to click the bypass authentication button. And while that phone dries off for the next day, I see how I expanded that. I'm going to create a new password. And it's going to be static for just 1 day. Okay, maybe I want to do that for a few days. Maybe I want to do that for 2 weeks. Maybe I just want to do it unlimited, which goes back to that Ant Buddy solution I was talking about earlier. You can address it instantaneously right here on the screen. I can also resend, an invitation for a FIDO token or the app itself. I can set the static password to be used infinitely. So hopefully that addresses the question from an IT perspective, and I consider the anybody who knows minimal about IT should be able to log in, and it won't feel like they're boiling the ocean. They know exactly what to do and how to do it. There's three choices, and the number one choice is pretty clear.
Great. I got one more, this is kind of funny and interesting. So what if I have an employee that either has a beard and shaves it, or vice versa, grows a beard, and now the facial recognition is not identified? I assume it's a similar process to what you just demonstrated.
See, that's a really good question. First off, I already don't like them because I am unable to grow a beard, so I don't care about them. No, I'm just kidding. I laugh when my coworkers grow beards. I'm like, what's that like to have a full beard? This is the screen that you're looking at right now is where you're going to address that, and the immediacy of the resolution is clear. That being said, don't wrap yourself around the axle of, can this work? They are in a lot more trouble if they can't log into their phone in general, because I would challenge that their phone is probably a critical line of communication. I would also challenge that in some capacity, they've set up a PIN on their phone or another mobile device that's linked, which means that they can log into the alternative device. Let's say I can log into my iPad I'm assuming, you know what, I don't know if you can really address the authentication from an Apple device to an Apple device. I think you can wipe out the first Apple device if needed and then restore it appropriately. You can restore it. You know what? I don't know. I've always kept the pin on the back end just in case for something like that. But that's a really good question. I personally, best practice, always keep alternative devices, not just one device registered here. You can see from an administrative screen, from this administrative screen, you can see how easy it is to manage them and remove them as needed. It's easy for your engineer or your admin team or your executive team to have one of these YubiKeys as an emergency. I strongly recommend that. But as far as the biometrics on the phone, I don't know. I think this screen, I was just going to try to find a way. The answer is go to the screen, and you've addressed that instantly. But
yeah, I was going to say, worst case scenario, I can go to passwords temporarily, right? Take a new image of my new face, and my biometrics is back in play, right?
Yeah. Well, here's what you do. If you're looking at my screen, so I'm going to John. Okay. Hey, John, you have 2 weeks, 14 days. This is what your password is going to be to grow that beard out, and then you move forward from there. So yeah, this is where you would handle that. This is absolutely where you address that.
Excellent. Believe it or not, that's all the questions I have, but lots of good ones. If there's, I'll give another minute here. If anyone else has any other questions they'd like to ask, and you can either ask that, by taking off your audio and asking it personally, or if you want to do it through chat, either way.
Yeah, we love questions, everyone. Seriously, it is. This is the way we all learned. This is learning to explain something makes us realize how much we understand it. And as you can see, I was trying to explain a way around this screen, and I don't understand it as well as I should. I know for a fact you can address it on the screen. I was just hoping for a better solution. So asking questions like that, will give you a quick either path to resolution, or you'll understand that this is truly out of the box ready for your environment, which is a very nice place to be.
Yeah, so while we're waiting on questions, Tony, I would just ask, as so many of our vendor partners and Cloud Plus included, of course we have a promotion for all of our attendees. And if you can maybe go back to the PowerPoint and show what that promotion is. Why don't we go ahead and cover that while we're waiting questions?
I'm sharing that screen right now. So, so the good thing is that Brian has worked very hard for all of you here. So NSA is going to, through the NSA partnership, we're going to actually do a breach reporting for all of your users, not just for the @company.com. So the user @company.com, it will be for their personal email address as well if they choose to enter it. And I cannot explain the value of that because remember, everybody being breached in one way will eventually lead to the place you don't want it to go. And so it's best to understand, we call it education through exposure, where the weak points are. And this is unfortunately, as one of my engineers says, there's the carrot and the stick. This is the stick. SDO is the carrot, and it's a way out. It's a path to resolution. The point that everybody should really drill in is that this is self-actuating. Once it's implemented, it just works. There isn't a lot of maintenance. There isn't a lot of concern. It just works. And a security policy that improves the end user experience and self-actuates I always said, I'm like, something like that's too good to be true. It is real. It's here. And I believe it's going to be a true standard within the next 18 months. It has to be, at least from the direction the security, cybersecurity policies are going, insurance policies, that is.
Tony, thank you. So I absolutely love this promotion because it really helps companies understand how vulnerable they truly are with your employee email addresses and so on. And all we're asking is that you schedule a one-on-one. So reach out to me if you're interested in doing this. And like I said, this is incredibly valuable, I think, especially for the larger companies that are on here, because you're only as strong as your weakest link. And it's worth knowing, right? We also have another question. Debbie has one here. I use LastPass, which encourages a unique password for every site. If I indeed make each password unique, do I still have to change passwords once a year minimum?
So I didn't want to jump into this because each of these questions or each of these topics we can talk about, for hours. So here is my summary of password managers as a whole. If I told you that in the next year or two, some of your accounts are going to be compromised, that should scare you. That should be absolutely unacceptable. You couldn't believe, and it's going to happen. It's absolutely going to happen. The irony, the hypocrisy of both the question and the response is that everyone on this call, at least a huge majority, has a password manager to address and minimize the impact of exactly that. We've literally accepted the fact that one of our accounts are going to be compromised. So what we're doing is we're siloing that particular account with this particular password, which and I know, you've copied and pasted that password and put it in multiple locations because it's some random password. And you do it a lot, and everyone does it because you've accepted that that damage is going to occur, which is fascinating to me. And so since you're trying to minimize the damage or the amount of accounts that are going to be hacked or services that are going to be hacked, what that does is it gives you more passwords to manage. And if you have a keylogger installed on your desktop or your laptop or your mobile device, which you probably have had something similar in some capacity in the last 10 years, you look at the statistics and they're just unreal. And it may not be actually on the keyboard or the device itself. It may be at the gateway level, inspecting the payload from a source inside the network that's very specific to you. So, and it unpacks the payload and it says, here's what you typed and here's the destination you typed it. It happens to be at bfa.com, and here, man in the middle attacks. There's all kinds of funny stuff that could occur. Don't want to get into that technical tar pit, but once you understand that your password manager is siloing the damage because you've accepted the concept that your accounts are going to be hacked, and you're using that password to some degree in multiplications, and in some degree those passwords can be scraped with man in the middle or a keylogger. Once you've typed something in your computer, that password is null and void. It doesn't matter how many unique passwords you have for every single service. So just process that. I don't mean to scare anyone. It's kind of like the rule of fighting. If you're in MMA and you train, the more you've learned how to fight, the less you ever want to fight, because you realize there's a lot of bad stuff out there, a lot of bad people. It's that little 125-pound kid over there that could really, really, really hurt me. It's not the big one. There's so many things out there that are terrifying. The one thing that really brings it all together is moving the target in an autonomous, consistent fashion. Because when that happens, it's virtually impossible to stay on top of that from a hacking perspective. If you are a mark, then of course they're just going to be watching you, and you don't have, a 3-week time period. You should probably keep your password rotations, to once a week, and you can define those policies in the control panel that I just showed you.
Excellent. Well, we're just about at the top of the hour, and Tony, I can tell you that with all the webinars that we have, rarely do we have this many questions. So this is tremendous. I would strongly encourage anyone that's on this particular webinar today to please reach out to me, schedule your demo, get that free breach report. I can't imagine why a company wouldn't want to do that, to see how vulnerable things may be. And let's see if there's something that we can do here for you guys. Again, this is truly leading edge. We appreciate your participation in this. We're very excited about this partnership with Cloud Plus. And Tony, I want to thank you once again for doing an excellent demo and handling a ton of questions. And if anyone else has
Brian,
any
you
other
and your team has
questions,
been amazing.
please forward them.
Yeah, reach out to Brian, and me and my team and I will do whatever we can to assist you. Brian and you and your team have been absolutely incredible, and I think this will provide quite a bit of value on the low end, and frankly, where I think it'll end up is everybody's going to be saying this is exactly what we've been waiting for.
Excellent. Thank everybody for attending, for taking this time out of your day. Please let us know how we can help. And Tony, thank you as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Take care.
Thank you.